All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're going to start today with a little visualization exercise.
Yeah.
So I want you to just picture the map of the United States in your head. Now imagine you decide to ride a bicycle across it. New York to LA. That's kind of the standard extreme bucket list item, right? Roughly 3,000 miles. It's huge. It's the kind of thing you tell your grandkids about.
It is. It's a life-changing event for most people. I mean, it takes months. It takes training, a serious level of commitment.
Right. But now, imagine you look at that map and you say, no, cutting across it's too easy. That's a shortcut. Instead, you decide to ride the perimeter. You trace the entire outside edge of the country.
So up the East Coast, across the northern border, down the Pacific.
And then all the way back across the South.
Which completely changes the math. You're not doing 3,000 miles anymore. You're taking a 3,000-mile road trip and turning it into a 12,000-mile odyssey.
Yeah, you're essentially riding halfway around the planet, but, staying within one country.
It's an insane idea.
Exactly. And that is the starting point for our subject today, Brian D. Pease. But, as we dug into the stack of sources for this deep dive.
Oh, it's been pretty extensive.
Oh, it's huge. We're talking podcast interviews from 2016, transcripts of his keynote speeches, news articles, and even business updates from Thailand as recently as this year, 2026.
Right.
And when you look at all that, it became obvious pretty quickly that this isn't really a story about cycling.
Not at all. If you focus just on the bike or the mileage, you totally miss the point. The bike is just a vehicle, literally and metaphorically. The real story here is about the psychology of luck. It's about how a kid from a normal suburb ends up in the 82nd Airborne, then living in a shack in Asia, and finally building a business in the Thai jungle. It's a case study in what drives a person to seek out extreme discomfort when they could easily just stay comfortable.
And we are definitely going to get into the why of that discomfort. But I also have to flag, we need to talk about the peanut butter.
The peanut butter.
Because the amount of peanut butter this man consumed is, frankly, alarming.
It was an industrial amount of peanut butter, yes. We will definitely get to the fueling strategy, but to understand the fuel, we have to understand the engine.
Okay, so let's unpack this properly. Because to understand why a guy rides 12,000 miles around America, you have to go back to where he started. And looking at the early biography sources, it's surprisingly normal.
Aggressively normal. And that's actually a crucial part of the narrative. Brian grew up in southern York County, Pennsylvania. He describes it as this, quintessential American upbringing.
Right.
His family had huskies, he played sports, they went to a beautiful park nearby. He explicitly says in one of his talks that he thought everyone lived this way. He was in a bubble of safety and stability.
He didn't know what he didn't know. He just assumed the baseline for human existence was, suburban Pennsylvania.
Exactly. And for his generation, and arguably for the country as a whole, that bubble has a very specific expiration date.
September 11th.
September 11th.
You're pretty young when that happened, right?
Yeah. He was in 10th grade. And there is this vivid, almost cinematic detail in his recounting of that day that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
He's in class, and a teacher pops his head in and says the towers were hit. And Brian, sitting in this safe suburban classroom, immediately thinks, hit with what? A frisbee? A baseball.
Wow. That really illustrates the level of innocence we're talking about. The concept of a catastrophic attack wasn't even in his file system. He couldn't conceive of what hit meant in that context.
No. But once the TV turned on, the switch flipped. He says he knew that day, right then and there, that he was going to join the Army. And he didn't just want to join some support unit. He wanted to be, as he put it, up front.
So he joins the 82nd Airborne Infantry. He's looking for action. And usually when we cover military stories on the deep dive, this is where we get into the combat tales, the adrenaline, the firefights.
The camaraderie, all of it.
Right.
And the sources indicate he saw plenty of that. But the pivotal moment for him, the one that seems to dictate the next 20 years of his life, wasn't a battle. No, it was a quiet moment. This is the catalyst we always look for in these profiles. He's in Baghdad. This is around 2005 or 2006. And amidst all the rubble, he sees a young boy living in a shack. The boy is deaf.
And the sources say he's deaf because of the war, right?
Correct. The bombings. His parents couldn't protect his ears from the concussion of the blasts. They didn't have ear protection. They didn't have bunkers. So Brian is standing there. He's fully geared up. He's got his health, his American citizenship, his hearing, his rifle. And he's looking at this kid who has lost almost everything.
It's a stark contrast. You can almost see the split screen in your mind.
And Brian has this realization that just floors him. He realizes that the only difference between him and that kid is a GPS coordinate. It's pure chance.
Wow.
He calls it the luck factor. He realized, I didn't do anything to deserve to be the soldier rather than the victim. I just got born in a different zip code.
That's a heavy concept for a 20-something to process.
Yeah.
I feel like for a lot of people, that leads to survivor's guilt. You look at that disparity and you feel bad for having it so good. You feel paralyzed by it.
That is the typical response. We see that a lot. But Brian processed it differently, and this is the key to his psychology. He didn't see it as something to feel guilty about. He viewed it as a debt.
A debt.
Yeah. He basically decided, I won the lottery of birth. I didn't earn this safety. So what do I owe the world in return?
So the guilt transforms into obligation, becomes an energy source.
Exactly, or fuel. He leaves the army, uses the GI Bill to get a marketing degree, but he can't settle into a corporate job. That debt is still unpaid. So he essentially spins a globe and lands on Thailand.
Which seems like a standard gap year move. Go find yourself in Southeast Asia. But he goes a bit deeper than the full moon parties and the beaches.
Much deeper. He decides to teach English despite having zero teaching experience. And later he travels to Vietnam and Indonesia. And this period is what he calls his education of empathy. He's actively seeking out that contrast he saw in Baghdad. He wants to understand it.
The sources mentioned Jakarta, Indonesia. He talks about seeing these gleaming, high-end malls right next to absolute squalor. It's that visual juxtaposition again.
And there's one image he describes that is really hard to shake. He meets a blind, elderly woman living in a shack on stilts because of the floodwaters. And to get into her house, she has to walk up a narrow 2x4 plank.
A blind woman walking a tightrope just to get home.
Every single day. And Brian tries it. He's physically fit, athletic, former 82nd Airborne, and he can barely do it. Again, it just reinforces that idea of privilege. He has the luxury of balance. She has the necessity of survival.
It's during this time in Southeast Asia that he starts to formulate his philosophy on giving. And he references something here that I found really interesting, a neurological concept.
Yes, the high of helping. He discovered, and this is backed by plenty of research, that biologically, the giver often receives a bigger hit of endorphins than the receiver.
Yeah.
It creates a feedback loop. He realized that service wasn't just a moral obligation, it was actually a pathway to personal fulfillment. It made him feel good.
It's selflessness.
In the best way possible. He mentions Adam Braun here, the founder of Pencils of Promise, which is one of the charities Brian ends up supporting. There's a great anecdote about the difference in desire.
Right. Adam Braun used to ask kids in the West, if you could have anything in the world, what would you want? And they'd say, I want a Ferrari or I want an Xbox.
Standard stuff, it's material.
Then he asked kids in the developing world the same question. And the answer wasn't a car. It was, I want a pencil.
Just a pencil.
That hits you hard.
That contrast between the desire for luxury and the desire for the most basic tool of education, that really solidified Brian's mission. He realized he could use his physical capabilities, his ability to endure pain and miles, to bridge that gap. He could suffer a little bit so they wouldn't have to suffer as much.
Which brings us to 2015. He comes back to the States. He's 30 years old. He's got this Buddha on a bicycle logo he's designed. And he decides to ride the perimeter of the United States. Now, I want to be clear about the scale here. We mentioned it in the intro, but this is 12,100 miles.
It's staggering. To put it in perspective, the circumference of the Earth is about 24,000 miles. So he is riding halfway around the world, but entirely within the borders of the U.S. He hit 37 states.
And was he doing this with a team? Did he have a van following him with snacks and spare tires and a massage therapist?
No sagwagon, as they call it in the cycling world. This was fully unsupported. He had everything strapped to his frame. Tent, sleeping bag, solar panels to charge his gear, computer, cameras. He looked like a pack mule on wheels.
And the peanut butter. We have to talk about the peanut butter now.
Yes, the peanut butter. He calculated that peanut butter was the most efficient calorie per dollar fuel available. It's calorie dense, it's cheap, and it doesn't spoil easily.
So how much are we talking?
He consumed over 40 pounds of it during the trip.
My mouth is sticking together just thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he had some jelly. But this wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a job.
That's an important distinction. He wasn't on vacation. He was managing a fundraising campaign for Pencils of Promise and the National Military Family Association. He treated it like a 9 to 5, or really a 5 to 9. If he wasn't pedaling, he was emailing donors, updating social media, editing video, or speaking at schools along the route.
There are two stories from this ride that I think really highlight the insanity and the resilience of what he was doing. The first is the tornado in Iowa.
This is the reality of being unsupported. He's stealth camping, which means hiding your tent in the woods or behind a building so you don't get hassled. He's in Iowa, and a massive storm rolls in. The sky turns green, tornado sirens are going off.
And he's in a tent.
He's in a thin nylon sack. He texts his buddy his GPS coordinates and says, essentially, if you don't hear from me in the morning, this is where I was.
That is terrifying, just waiting in the dark to see if you get blown away.
But he survived it. However, the second story, this one actually blew my mind. The Christmas Day Marathon.
This is the story that makes you question his sanity.
It encapsulates his entire mindset. It's Christmas Day. He's alone in Texas. He decides to run a fundraiser. He asks people to pledge money per mile for every mile he rides in a 24-hour period.
So he's incentivized to ride as far as physically possible. The more he hurts, the more the charity gets.
Correct. He ends up riding 301 miles in a single day.
300 miles.
He raised $10,000 in those 24 hours. But the how is what is fascinating. To hit 300 miles in 24 hours, you need to maintain a high average speed. You can't be stopping for stop signs or traffic lights or yielding to cars.
So where do you go to avoid all that in Texas?
He found a corporate parking lot. It was Christmas, so the office park was empty. It was a giant paved loop.
Wait, so he rode in a parking lot?
He rode in circles for about 20 hours.
Stop. You're telling me he spent Christmas Day riding a bicycle in a loop in an empty parking lot for 20 hours straight?
That is exactly what he did.
That sounds like psychological torture. That sounds like something they do to break spies.
It sounds maddening, doesn't it? But to Brian, it was just math. The parking lot was flat, it was paved, it had no obstacles. It was the most efficient way to generate miles, which meant it was the most efficient way to generate money for the charities.
Talk about prioritizing the mission over the experience.
It also speaks to his philosophy of endurance. He talks a lot about taking things one day at a time. When he started the trip in New York, looking at the full map of the U.S. made him physically sick with anxiety. It was too big.
I can imagine.
But if he just focused on the day, or in the case of Christmas, just the next loop of the parking lot, it was manageable.
He also had a great perspective on hills. I think he called them an investment.
Right. Most cyclists hate hills. Brian viewed them as a bank account. You pay an effort on the way up, and you cash out with speed and rest on the way down. It's a simple reframing, but it changes how you approach the pain. You aren't suffering, you're investing.
So despite being a solo rider, the sources suggest he wasn't actually alone all that much.
This challenges the whole lone wolf narrative. He went solo to fight solitude, which sounds contradictory, but he ended up couch surfing for like 40% of the trip. He used apps like couchsurfing.com or stayed with friends of friends or people he met at gas stations.
Which requires a lot of trust, especially in 2015.
It does. He mentions a bridge in Baton Rouge where a truck driver screamed at him and ran him off the road. But for the most part, he found that people were incredibly generous. It reinforced that idea that while the physical challenge was solo, the journey was communal. He couldn't have done it without the kindness of strangers.
So he finishes this massive loop. He arrives back in New York. He's raised $50,000 for charity. He's seen the whole country at 12 miles per hour. Most people would write a book, go on a speaking tour, maybe settle down and get that corporate job.
Brian is not most people.
Clearly, he moves back to Thailand.
He does. And this might seem like a left turn, but if you look closely, it's a continuation of the same theme. He co-founded Thailand Moto Tours with his friend Brandon Kritu, who is an ex-professional racer.
And looking at the website and the brochures and the source stack, this isn't your typical scooter around the beach tour where you go see a temple and drink a coconut.
No, they do enduro and supermoto tours. We're talking about proper off-road motorcycles going into the deep jungle, navigating mud, river crossings, mountain passes.
Why motorcycles? He spent a year on a bicycle. Why switch to an engine?
Access. He found that the motorcycle acts as a bridge. If you roll into a remote hill tribe village in a white tour bus with air conditioning, you are a tourist, you are separated by glass, you are an observer.
Like a zoo.
Exactly. But if you roll in on a motorcycle, covered in mud, sweating, taking your helmet off, you are vulnerable. You are approachable. The kids get excited about the bikes. The locals are curious about where you came from. It breaks down barriers immediately.
It's about getting off the beaten path again.
Their mission is to show people the real Thailand. They go to villages near the Myanmar border where foreigners essentially never go. And this brings up another cultural insight Brian talks about, the difference between Thai time and the Western rat race.
I imagine the 24-hour parking lot ride is the epitome of the rat race mentality. Maximum efficiency, maximum output.
Precisely. And in Thailand, especially in these villages, that concept doesn't exist. Time is fluid. It's about karma, helpfulness, and being present. He tells a story about stopping for lunch in a village where the restaurant was closed. In America, you'd be annoyed and check Yelp for the next place.
You'd leave a 1-star review.
Right. But in this village, a local just invited them into their hut and cooked for them.
No transaction, just hospitality.
And that is what he wants his clients to experience. He wants to drag these Westerners who are usually stressed and deadline-driven into the jungle to experience that level of presence. He's using the motorcycle to force them into the moment.
We also have to mention his wife, Amy. In the business updates, he refers to her as his lethal weapon.
Yes. Amy is Thai, and she seems to be the secret sauce of the operation. She handles the logistics, but more importantly, she bridges the language and cultural gap. She allows two American guys to bring groups of foreigners into sensitive, remote areas without it feeling invasive. She brings that authenticity he was craving when he first went there as a teacher.
And looking at the 2026 updates, the business is thriving. They have sponsorship applications, partnerships with helmet brands like KYT. This wasn't just a phase. He built a life around this.
He did. And if we zoom out and try to connect the dots here, the 82nd Airborne, the deaf boy in Baghdad, the blind woman in Indonesia, the 12,000-mile bike ride, and now the jungle tours, what is the common thread?
It feels like seeking perspective.
I think it's specifically seeking discomfort to find gratitude.
Unpack that a bit. Why do you need discomfort to find gratitude? Can I just be grateful sitting on my couch?
You can try, but it's harder. Discomfort forces you to be present. When you are sleeping in a tent in a tornado, or riding a bike until your legs give out, or navigating a muddy track in the Thai jungle, you aren't worrying about your email inbox, you aren't worrying about social media likes or office politics. You're surviving.
It strips away the noise.
It does. And when you survive, when you get through that discomfort, you have this profound appreciation for the safety and comfort you usually take for granted. Brian seems to be someone who constantly needs to remind himself of his luck. He puts himself in situations where he has to work for it just to prove to himself that he deserves that GPS coordinate he was born with.
It's almost like an antidote to complacency. He's afraid of getting too comfortable in the bubble again.
That's a great way to put it. And remember his core belief. If your goal helps others, you have endless motivation. He admitted he couldn't have finished that bike ride if it was just for him. He would have quit in the parking lot. But because he was raising money for schools and military families, he could push through the pain.
It's the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, but turbocharged.
It is. There is a video transcript from a keynote he gave right after the bike ride. He is running on 2.5 hours of sleep. He's wearing a t-shirt because he has no clean laundry. He looks exhausted. And he asked the audience, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be?
Echoing the Adam Braun question about the pencil.
Right. And he admits to the crowd, I still kind of want a Ferrari.
Laughs. I love that. He's not a monk. He's not pretending to be perfect.
He's not. He loves dirt bikes and fast things. He's human. But he has learned to prioritize the service over the stuff. He's not saying you shouldn't want nice things. He's saying, don't let the pursuit of things blind you to the reality of the world. He realized that the American dream he grew up with, the park, the Huskies, the sports, was a global anomaly.
So we have a guy who went from a confused high schooler on 9/11 to a soldier, to a teacher, to an extreme cyclist, to a tour guide. It's a heck of a resume.
It is, but I think the most important line on that resume isn't a job title, it's the role of witness. He witnessed the poverty in Iraq, he witnessed the resilience in Indonesia, he witnessed the generosity of strangers in Nebraska, and he chose not to look away.
And he's still doing it. He's taking people into the jungle to show them the real Thailand, trying to give them that same perspective shift.
He's trying to pop their bubbles, just a little bit. Just like his was popped on 9/11. He wants to show them that the world is bigger, messier, and more beautiful than they think.
Well, this deep dive has certainly popped my bubble a bit today. I'm thinking about that 2x4 plank in my comfortable chair a little differently.
That's the goal.
As we wrap up, we've covered the miles, the peanut butter, and the philosophy. But we always like to leave you with something to chew on.
We do. And I want to go back to Brian's core realization, that GPS coordinate moment in Baghdad. It's a provocative thought experiment that I think everyone should try. If you truly accept it, I mean really internalized, that the only difference between you and someone living in extreme poverty was the latitude and longitude of your birth. Pure random chance. How would that change how you spent your Tuesday?
Would you be more patient? Would you be more generous?
Or would you, like Brian, get on a bike and start pedaling?
Something to think about next time you're stuck in traffic or complaining about the coffee. Huge thanks to Brian D. Peace's story for the inspiration today, and thank you for listening to this deep dive into a life of extreme gratitude. We'll see you next time.